Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I have an amazing guest here today, Robert Schram, and he is one of our guest speakers, our very special guest speakers for the virtual awards ceremony, where we are honoring the world's very first certified handwriting specialist teachers. How cool is that? So, Robert, I'm going to give the floor to you, and you can give us some background into who you are and whatever you like. Tell us what you think about things.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you also for inviting me. It's great that you are taking this initiative to explain how important handwriting is in society and particularly in educating children. Well, I went through quite a journey because I sort of had a professional career. Well, I grew up in a big family as a child. I have 4 brothers and 5 sisters. So mainly I sort of, and I was lucky, I received a lot of love from my parents. But mainly I already then sort of got accustomed to living in a small community. And of course, writing was very important in that time. Raising or getting raised in the 60s, it was sort of, there were no computers there, so handwriting was normal at schools. So I had a career as a project coordinator in utility for about 30 years. And when I turned 50, I sort of took a time out and I explored studying new economic and governance models because I could see the current models weren't very sustainable. And since then, I've been working as an author and an activist for creating a better world, creating new models, think of new systems, and I'm doing that for several transition platforms. In a nutshell, that's my background.
So, Robert, you are the very individual that I am telling everybody is that we need in every business, in every... People don't realize we need you. So forgive me, you may say no. You are a transition engineer. Am I correct? You are one of the new transition engineers that our planet needs, and every business, every industry, every country, every government, every agency, every council, every... Do you know, I was in a Zoom the other day, Robert. I was very naughty. I got access and I shouldn't have had access. Oh, don't tell anybody, okay? I was sent an invitation. I'm not going to say why. And I watched the ambassador for St. Lucia talking about the island and the trouble due to COVID. Mm-hmm. And I asked a question. I said, what are you doing about hiring a transition engineer to transition your island away from a tourist economy? She went mad. And she started arguing with me about bananas and you can't, she said to me, you can't ban tourism. And I thought, no. And then I realized, I thought, no, hang on a minute. So she muted me, okay? And I thought, no, I can type very fast. And I was in there typing questions. I said, no, you've misunderstood. Nobody said anything about bananas or canceling tourism. I want to know about the transition engineers. And most people think transition engineers. Now, I know that the skill set that you have and the specialism that you have, our planet needs a minimum of 1 million transition engineers. And you are going to be, you are the most sought after individuals in the world. Now, how did you go from a family that was that huge, because all I had was a brother, and that he was a pain in the buttski, okay? Yeah. How did you go from a big family like that to going into this completely other environment? Now, did you do a lot of work at home? Did your older brothers and sisters teach you, or was it all like a scrum? You know, when you got to the door, did you have to figure out whose shoes were whose?
Yes, sort of. Sometimes I used to wear the clothes of my elderly brother, of course, because they were not worn out yet, and at some age they fitted me, and so we already were reusing clothes in a sustainable way. So
already then your parents had no choice.
yes, but we had no choice, because in the 60s and 70s families were relatively poor still, and then the creative wealth came in the 80s and 90s, of course.
I
But
want
for
to
sure,
ask you. I want to
yeah.
ask you. When you were at home, did you work? Was there a? I'm just sorry. I'm just imagining. I'm imagining your household. I'm in your house, and I see this big kitchen table, and I see you all sitting at the table doing your schoolwork. Is this what it was like?
Well, I think we had some space in our own rooms, although I slept with 3 other brothers in one room. We had bunk beds, so
Okay.
because we only had 4 rooms above, so the first floor was filled with 4 rooms, and so 4 of my sisters were sleeping in one room, 4 of the boys with my brothers were sleeping in one room, my parents in one room, and then there was one room for an elder brother or sister to have some private time. But we did do a lot of homework in just in the living room and at the eating table. Although my father preferred to have sort of a discipline when we were eating, because with 10 children at the table, we were always making fun and making jokes, and nobody was really eating. So he sort of learned us to maintain a certain discipline at the table, so we could finish our meals and then we could start making jokes or do our homework after dinner. So, and yeah, that was always a bit challenging. It's not easy to find a place to study, but you certainly learn to be creative with that. You know, you can also go outside to the park or something.
I want to ask you about your earliest memories of school, of learning to write. What is there a memory that you have? Because most of us don't remember being taught to write. Most of us, we just think it's a given. We just think, oh, well, everybody can write. What was one of your earliest memories of learning to write, if you have one?
Yeah. Yes, I do have a memory, because being raised in the 60s, that you weren't really allowed to write with your left hand at schools.
No.
That was not done. And it turned out I was a lefty, so I was left-handed.
Oh my
So
goodness, you were forced to write with your right hand.
exactly, I was forced to write with my right hand the first 2 or 3 years before it sort of became accepted on schools, and I was allowed to write with my left hand. And writing with my right hand felt very unnatural to me. And I do think it sort of gave me a benefit or some advantage, because I had to train my brain to think differently and to think more independently, I think. But when it was allowed, uh, writing with the left hand, I switched, and then it felt much more natural to me. So, but I think it shaped me by then already on a personal level as a child. Learning to write by hand. So that's one thing I can think of right now.
That is so interesting. You reminded me, I was approached by a mother who said to me, my daughter's handwriting, something it's not legible, it's not fluent. Anyway, I said, and she turned up at my house when I was living in Lebanon. I was like, how do you find me? I opened my door and she said, you've got to help me. I said, look, please, lady. She said, please. I said, look, come in, have a cup of tea, sit there on the sofa. And I did the handwriting match fit assessment with her daughter. And I said, this child is a genius. But there's something very strange going on here. The child is writing as if she should be left-handed, but she's right-handed. So the mother looked at me with this look on her face, and I said, no, don't tell me you forced your child to write with a right. And she started crying, and I said, okay, So your daughter was forced to write with her right hand, but she's really a left-handed writer. So I said
Hmm.
to her daughter, look, you're going to have to go away and learn to write with the left hand. That's all there is I can say, because your brain is at war with itself. You know,
Yeah,
your brain is trying, the one hemisphere is saying, listen, this is my job, and the other hemisphere is saying, well, this is what I was told to do. And about a year later, I bumped into her mother and I said, how's she doing? And she said, oh my word, she's flourishing. She's blossomed into. I said, did she, because I recommended, I said, this child is so bright. She needs to go and get a bursary. Any school would be dying to have this child learn at their institution. And she said, we applied for some scholarships and she got a scholarship. I said, all those years that she must have been so frustrated. I
yeah,
can't even imagine, Robert. If somebody had forced me to write with my left hand because I'm a righty, well, that would have been mad. So
yeah.
when you were growing up, so what was the age that you started writing with the left hand? Can you remember?
I think I must have been 7 by then,
7.
probably.
7.
Yeah,
So you'd already
around
been sort of
8.
from the age of, so we're looking at 3 years old, 4 years old, because pre-handwriting, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6. So already 4, 5 years of writing with your right hand. So you've
yes.
developed that hemisphere. Oh, you are a great case study, Robert. You do know that the teacher is going to be coming to ask you questions. This is a PhD. This is a PhD for some clever teacher out there.
Might be, yeah.
It's going to do some amazing research. We need to do like a social media blitz and ask anybody out there, were you a left-hander and forced to write with your right hand? I'd love to hear from you. Now, you said that growing up in the 60s,
Hmm.
so you were a 60s child and I was a 70s child. And I remember the first computer. I remember being a teenager and one of my friends said, don't go in there. My dad is busy programming. And I remember it was the whole wall was this big square thing. I think it was an IBM or something back then. And then I remember when we learned to use computers and they were these big square, and they were just really word processors. We didn't really have, and we look at this explosion, this technological explosion. Do you feel that being able to write has changed everything that you do? Do you feel that that you've got some sort of a real advantage because you can write well, and so you have that creative thinking with writing, because writing develops computational thinking, we don't realize it.
Hmm.
And how do you feel about technology? Do you think that technology is going to be the savior of our planet, or what is going to save us?
Well, the last question is a big question. What is going to save us? It's probably ourselves, hopefully. So, in the first place. But of course, I do agree technology is a very important part of it. It's not everything, and it shouldn't be. But in combination with a lot of other, we speak about 12 sectors of society, right? We have education, we have governance, we have economy, we have healthcare, and we have, in this case, a lot of other sectors that are interrelated with each other and they affect each other. So certainly technology is one of the sectors that has importance, but the other 11 sectors are equally important, and maybe you can come up with even more sectors that are. But I do feel that handwriting, sort of learning to write by hand, firstly, it learns you or it teaches you to formulate and synchronize your thoughts first. Because usually, especially in the 60s and 70s, writing down something on paper, you want to do it right. You don't want to make a lot of mistakes.
Mm.
So you learn to think about what you and how you want to write things up front, and then you put it down on paper. And with the computer, it's much more easy to make changes or just, delete a lot of stuff or things like that. So I do think it makes you more conscious of the process. how you want to express things. And I think it teaches you also to listen first to your inner voice, but also to listen better to others. And that's my experience.
What made you want to be a transition engineer, Robert? What was that? What was the defining moment for you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
set you on this path?
Well, I'm very intuitive, and so I followed my inner compass on that part. And working as a project coordinator in utility, Melanie, I freelanced for 25 years. So I did over 50 different projects for maybe 25 different companies. So I learned a lot from working within different teams and meeting a lot of different types of people. So you sort of learn how people can act, and I feel that that was for me a very good learning school to see what works and what doesn't work. And in the last 10 years of my career, I was experiencing, because being a project coordinator, you always have to deal with deadlines. There's always a lot of pressure, which I didn't mind because it becomes to me naturally. I'm a coordinator. It doesn't really matter what the parameters are, but I easily coordinate. And maybe that has to do with the left handwriting stuff.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But because of that, I did see and understood that our current systems, the economic and governance systems, they were not sustainable. Clearly, people were affected by it negatively. So it made me starting to think like, well, these are just two systems that we already have for hundreds or thousands of years. Can we do better than this? I'm sure we can do better than this. So that's what initiated this drive for me to, okay, but if we can do better, what can we do better? And then I sort of discovered that there were, of course, hundreds of thousands of groups and movements and organizations and millions of people working on the same process, how to create a better world. So and that inspired me to found a group called United Earth, to start connecting these groups. But because I thought it doesn't make sense if everybody is sort of in the silos and everybody's doing their own thing and we're not connected. You could have a wonderful solution or idea and somebody else on the other end of the planet is working on the same thing. So why not connect all this wisdom, this collective wisdom, and see how we can do better? And that's sort of roughly the process that we are now going through. And now for WorldSummit Movement then, as a design and coordinating platform to connect these groups and ideas.
So Robert, we've got all of your details below on your page, and we will also have this as a podcast eventually once, because this today goes live. Today's, we go live with this on the 19th of January. And we hope that this is going to go around the world for everybody to understand how important handwriting is, how important a skill it is to be a life skill, and that we have, if we're not careful, we start getting an education apartheid, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that, because I'm a great believer that if we have literacy, climate literacy, carbon literacy, transition engineering, transformation, I think they all meld into one. And if we are literate, we can then access all of that climate curriculum. And once we've accessed all of that climate curriculum, we then have transition engineers such as yourselves who understand how to go and transition industries, businesses, agencies, county councils, all sorts of government departments, countries, towards sustainability and to new sustainable systems. So that's absolutely fascinating. And you are so right. I've seen us working in silos. I've seen firsthand how that, you know, with what I do with my other hat on, you know, I mean, I started out as a handwriting specialist, and that's what I'm doing here. Is I want to share my knowledge. I want to make sure that there are thousands and thousands of doctors of handwriting. I don't want to hang on to this knowledge, because to do that would be foolhardy. To not share this specialist knowledge that I have, and this experience and this training that I have, to not share this, and to make sure that we have teachers that become certified handwriting specialist teachers and master's degree of handwriting, the history of handwriting, the psychology of handwriting, the science of handwriting, and then go and do a PhD, because you are most certainly, you are an entire PhD, Robert. You don't even realize it, because I'd love to know, can you imagine? I'd love to know how many individuals there are out there and what they're doing now, those that were forced to write with the right hand, but were actually left-handed, and how many of them are in a similar profession as you are now. How many of them are out there
Yeah,
busy working on saving the planet? It must
that
be
would be,
you.
yeah, that would be very interesting to get feedback from that.
I tell you what, you got me going. You've got me thinking, like, oh, I'm going to do a PhD on there. I think that
Right.
the more that we encourage, we need to have, I always say to my husband, because my husband is, I mean, chaos. I say to him, if you don't have systems in place, you have chaos. And if your system is not working, it's chaos. So therefore change the system, or put a system in place so that you don't have chaos. And it's exactly what you are saying about, if we are heading into, we've got a climate crisis, it means our system is in chaos. So we need
Yeah,
new systems. We need systems to, we either take the systems we have and we transition them, and then we have transformation. We have to have a system so that we don't have chaos. Oh, it's,
yeah,
I tell you what, Robert, this is a whole other talk for a whole other virtual summit.
I
You know
agree.
that.
Yeah,
Robert, you've got to come and talk on the Sustainable Schools Virtual Summit, please. I will send
would
you,
love to.
please.
Yeah.
This is, do you know, there was, I think we don't even realize, I was speaking to a lady this week, and I was saying to her, I said, you know, we're going to be doing this training in all of these schools in the EU. And she said, oh, but my government is telling me about cars. We're going to be taxing cars. And I said, no, love, it's not about cars. It's about everything. And she said,
Hmm.
okay, how many jobs? I said, millions. Millions and millions of jobs are going to be needed in this field. Millions. I mean, there are going to be jobs that we don't even know are out there. And I know we need a minimum of 1 million of you, 1 million transition engineers. We are short of SDG trained town planners just here in the United Kingdom. We're short of environmental engineers in the UK, 500,000. So come on, folks, we need these highly skilled, highly literate, really deep cognitive thinkers, and it starts with handwriting. Believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy, but it does. Okay, so the reason I was saying to my mother this morning, Mum, you know, I was crying. I said, do you know why I created StartBee? I said, because I felt that I was never good enough. And I realized that when somebody told me my own daughter, who was going from preschool into primary school, they said, oh, she's not good enough. She can't write her own name. And I said to my mother, oh, nobody's going to do that to my daughter. My daughter is going to write. And this feeling of always being the imposter in the room. I always feel that I have this, you know, I said to my mother, even when I'm dealing with professors and governments and princes, I always feel like I'm the imposter in the room. And I'm thinking, no, actually, no. Come on. I'm educated. I'm teaching professors. I'm teaching, but we have got to be educated. And it's the most important thing. And it's sometimes we create solutions We don't even realize. We think that that solution is for one individual, and that solution goes out and it solves a whole issue for millions and millions and millions. So that's where I
Yeah.
started with StartBee, because just creating a solution for one little girl. And here we are 11 years later, millions of children learning to write. That's the whole idea around the world, because we need them. We need these deep.
Amazing. Yeah, wonderful.
Robert,
Wonderful.
you absolutely rock. You've just been an amazing speaker for today. If you have one thing to say to our certified handwriting specialist teachers, what would you say?
Well, I wouldn't directly encourage them to, but maybe we talked about it as an experiment to change hands to see how much fun you can have with it.
Oh, Robert,
but just for 1 hour, just for 1 hour.
Robert, you know that in our mini, we have something called mini bees for the very little children, for the fine and gross motor skills. We actually encourage the children to use both hands. We get them to use both sides.
Yeah.
And then we let them choose which side is their dominant hand, because we don't know always. You know, I've seen children who will swap from left to right up until the age of like 7, 8 sometimes, and the teacher says, "It's driving me mad. He's hopping for," and I said, "That's fine. He's happy with it. He's not bothered. Let him." you know.
Yeah. Exactly.
So your message to teachers is, try both sides. Try both the left hand and the right hand, and let's see what we develop.
That's exactly.
Right. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you to all of these amazing certified handwriting specialist teachers around the world, wherever you are today. We are honoring you. You are the specialists. You are going to be the ones that are going to be our change makers in education globally. And we cannot wait to be taking things a whole lot further with you. So Robert, you and I are going to be doing another sustainable schools talk. That's a whole other talk altogether. And I'm going to book you in. You have no choice. I know where you live. I'm going to track you down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
No, it's been awesome. It's been such a great talk. I've absolutely loved it. You've got my creative juices flowing here. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you all on the other side. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye, Ben.
Bye-bye.